Good evening. Call Property Management Committee to order. First order of business, approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. First order of business, Burton Street Ambulance Station update.
Okay, we're going to get these first two items off fairly quickly and save your time for the other discussion about the office space study. Okay, Burton Street Ambulance Station. Actually, today they did have their walkthrough and punch list on the substantial completion, so they're all but ready for us to occupy the building in a few days, probably. So that's going good. Through July the 6th, we paid them 91% of the money, so we're due another pay request here just in a few days. So that's project it looks good. If you'll go by there and see it, it looks all finished up. Judicial Building garage update, and Judicial Building both. The garage is basically complete, I guess, except for some sidewalks, and actually the street work is now putting in the curb and gutters, and so we're hopefully within the next, I'd hate to say what it's going to be with you, Steve. They keep putting us off because the road is delaying.
If we had a street to plug into, it'd be ready.
If we had a street to plug into, we could drive into the thing tomorrow almost, but maybe by August the 15th or sometime in August, hopefully. The Judicial Building, again, is moving along really well. 68% we paid out, and that's probably going to exceed, probably get up to 75% when we get the next pay request. I put in on your iPads there the minutes of the actual PBA meeting last time. You can just sort of read that at some point if you haven't already done it. You can see a clear narrative, you might say, on exactly what has happened already, what's completed, what's in some stage of construction, you know, how many floors the electrical rough-in is completed on all floors, for example. So you can see that and get a little bit of more detailed information about what they're doing. But right now it's really moving very well with no real difficulties. So again, we're supposed to be in that Judicial Building on May the 1st of next year. That's really all I've got to say about those things, actually, Mr. Chairman. Unless they've got some questions. We do have Mr. Johnson here that knows probably more about the details of what's happening than I do.
Anyone got any questions? Okay, no questions. Move right along. Okay, next on the agenda, office space study progress update.
Okay, this is Mr. Steve Johnson, Mr. Afton Mooney.
All right.
They're both
Join you
from
up
Grisham
here.
and Smith, and we're going to turn them over and let them make their presentation.
All right. We handed out the preliminary draft report. Let me give an introduction of what we want to do today and where we are, and then Afton will lead us through the details of the report. Our work is 4 parts, and we're half done. We completed the first 2 pieces, and that was to do an evaluation of some of the properties that are identified for the quality of the space, the suitability to use as county space, how does it relate to current code and the life of the mechanical systems, et cetera, in the buildings. We've completed that, and we'll talk about that. And the second phase of our work was to create an occupancy demand of what the county office space requirements are, a snapshot of where you are right now with what you have, and then a 5-year forecast of what you could reasonably expect the need to be in 5 years. So we're reporting on, this is a meeting where we're reporting our findings to you today. We're not really needing a decision. We're seeking questions and guidance and feedback. If there's something else we need to go look at, if we've missed something, that's what we're about today. The next 2 steps will be for us to develop a series of scenarios of how you could locate your office demand in your existing buildings in various combinations. And so that'll be our next task, which is really It will be several, I expect it to be several options of how it will work. And then the final phase, after presenting that to you and the authorities and getting that feedback, we'll try and boil it down to a single scenario or maybe two, and then prepare a detailed report with phasing, et cetera, about how the county, the report will recommend how the county should move forward with the office space needs. So that's where we are right now. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our methodology, and then I'll turn it over to Afton, who has led our team effort. We started 2 months ago. We think we have about 3 more months to go to be finished. In 2 months, in September, we expect to come back with part 2 and then try to be wrapped up by the end of October. That's our timeline we're working on. The page 3, well, I just went over page 2, which kind of is the task we're doing. Page 3 identifies the projects that we looked at, the properties that we looked at. We've got it on the screen here, but it's easier to see, obviously, with the paper copies. That's why we printed those. And you can see the properties that we've looked at. And our methodology there, we put together a team that included an architect, Afton, an interior designer, a structural engineer, a mechanical engineer, and an electrical engineer. That was our team. We've got all the drawings we could possibly find. Ben and the folks at the county were very helpful to gather drawings for us and material. That with Ben and his staff, we walked through every one of these buildings and then prepared our report. And then we followed up with some additional information after we kind of saw what we had. We had some holes in it, so that's what we've been working on. Then go to page 4, which shows the way we're grading the buildings. And the 3 main things we're looking for is the life safety and code compliance, the structural integrity of the building, and the building systems. And by that I mean, I'm on page 4, and that's where the building systems, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems in the building, the status of those. And we've given them, instead of a numerical rating, we've given them a green, yellow, and red, sort of the stoplight. Green means it is acceptable and in good condition. Yellow means with some minor improvements, it could be made into green, and red means it's in poor condition and it needs significant improvements to be made green, if you will, acceptable. All right, so I went through that pretty quick, but now I'm going to, Afton, again, back on who we are, I'm the principal on the new courthouse, and Afton is the interior designer on the new courthouse. So we came to this work very familiar with many of these agencies and downtown, and the work we've done for the courthouse. We've tried to reuse some of that work for this study, so we didn't have to do anything twice. And Afton is the leader of our effort on this. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and we will go through the results of our report right now and jump in with any questions. If we missed something or made something not clear, just jump right in. All right, Afton, thank you.
All right, so we are starting with the building evaluations on the existing judicial center. And we have used the rating scale, as Steve mentioned, and all of these for the buildings under study will have this rating scale up on the top right.
It's page 5.
Yes, we're on page 5. So generally, for the life safety and code of this building, we've given it a yellow or fair condition, needing some improvement. Structure is pretty good, and then building systems also fair and need some updates. To speak to that more specifically,
Let me,
yes.
look, what the document you have is a summary document.
Great.
There's another document of about 50 or 60 pages that has all the details. So we're just giving you the summary pages. We can go into this as deep as anybody wants to probe, but we didn't want to overload you with a lot of detailed information. So we have that appendix with everything else here if we need to go somewhere. Sorry.
That's great, and that's a great point. So general, this building, I think most of you are familiar with, but it's 5 levels and a basement level as well. And it's steel joist structure on load-bearing masonry walls. There's ADA accessibility from the exterior, and the parking is the public garage within 2 blocks and an hourly parking around the square. This building is sprinklered as far as code compliance goes now. I'll talk about that. It's a sprinklered building, but the stairs do not meet egress requirements, but some minor modifications could bring that up to code.
It's primarily handrails and hardware.
That's right.
Is that the stairs going up to the door?
No, the stairs within the building.
The fire stairs,
Okay.
the fire
Fire
stairs
stairs.
inside the building.
The elevator also does not meet code. It's more regarding the emergency system, so standby power, hoistway venting, and Star of Life requirements. So some updates might be necessary there. The restrooms are not ADA compliant with the exception of the 4th floor, but generally so levels 3 and 5 have a multi-fixture restroom, which is more efficient, and we're meeting some plumbing fixture counts, but we're deficient, I guess, on this building on some other levels.
Be sure you understand that point right now.
Okay.
Only the 3rd and 5th floor have any really sufficiently publicly accessible restrooms. 1, 2s, and 4s are scattered in office areas.
They're inefficiently laid out. A lot of them are private right now because this was set up as the courthouse, so they're in the judge's chambers currently, but once that's vacated, they're
This
just spread
building-
out.
This building was remodeled or something in the last few years, hasn't it?
No, we haven't done anything to this building.
All the things.
Now, we've improved some lighting and some things like that, but nothing of any other significance.
Okay.
How old is this building? When was it built? Do you know?
70s,
Yeah, sometime in the 80s,
80s.
or maybe it was 80, I don't know.
I thought it was the late 70s, but I haven't looked at the drawings. It might be early 80s.
It might open up in the 80s. I think it started
Started in the late
78.
70s. That may be what I'm referring to, the date on the drawings. All right,
All right.
we'll keep going and stop us and slow us down if we need to go into some detail. We can obviously come back and decide.
Okay, then we have the annex. We're calling it the annex. It's the building adjacent to the Judicial Center, and that's also including, I think it's referenced as the Coin Building at the back side off the square. So we have rated 3 reds for life safety and code.
You want to slow down.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
So this one is rated with 3 reds on life safety code, the structure, and the building systems. So it's 2 levels, and a basement level, wood frame floor construction with the load-bearing masonry walls. The annex is supported by it's a party wall, so it's actually dependent on the adjacent Judicial Center. So regarding life safety and code compliance, it's not sprinklered, and to add fire suppression, we're estimating would probably exceed 50% limit on renovation policy, which that's just an estimate, but.
And you might explain that to them,
So-
what does that really
yes.
mean?
So that brings me to, in general, going through building codes, if we were to update or renovate a building, there's a certain percentage of renovation that would deem it needing to be brought up to current codes, so.
All codes would have to be brought into
If
compliance.
it's less than 50%, you have some leeway about what you renovate. If it's more than 50%, you have to do everything. And that's generally how the codes,
Right.
the inspectors
Up to-
interpret the code.
Up to the jurisdiction.
And we checked with the Rutherford officials to see how they would interpret it.
Yes. So egress stairs are, I know one set of stairs are not wide enough and they're wooden, so really just not code compliant. There's no guardrail either on those. Okay, and another concern is based on the age of the building and materials used, there's a high probability the products contain asbestos. So testing is recommended to determine level of remediation for that. The restrooms are not ADA accessible. Both levels are deficient in plumbing count by 2 water closets and 2 lavatories. Also, there's 2 large safes, 1 per level, which would also be very expensive to be able to remove or utilize that as occupiable. So we've kept that as a separate number in the usable square footage. Structurally, so it's very heavily loaded with filing, so we're not sure if the structure's been compromised based on that condition currently, because it is a wood joist system. There's cracks in slabs, but those don't appear to impact structural integrity. So significant deflection of the floors with heavy file loading could be a safety issue. So that's back to
It means it's not in imminent danger of collapsing, but floors have deflected by the heavy loading.
And then most of the plumbing for this building is not working. It's been cut off. And the sump pump is not working either in the basement. And, yeah.
So I think, we'll keep going, but you kind of get the gist of the message.
We get the idea.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Is it feasible, say in case a decision is made, to take this building down, but not the judicial center?
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's
Yes.
not possible.
This one's dependent on the judicial center, but the judicial center
It
is
is not dependent on that one.
Gotcha.
Yes.
That's a good question. Okay,
All right.
moving.
Goldstein building,
Goldstein, yes. This one,
page 7.
also red for life safety and code compliance, yellow for structure, and red for building systems. So this is 4 original buildings combined into one. It's 2 levels and a basement level, but there's a mezzanine conference level within those. There is ADA accessibility from the exterior, parking around the square, and the public garage nearby. So it's the original City Hall building is at the back corner, and that's masonry load-bearing walls and concrete floor structure, where the other 3 buildings are actually masonry load-bearing walls with the wood joist structure. Regarding some more detail regarding the life safety and code, building is sprinklered. The stairs have handrails but don't have guardrails. Some of the doors are not ADA accessible as well. And the travel distance, because of where the stairs are located, it exceeds the code maximum. It's non-compliant. So for somebody to exit out of the building from the 2nd floor. The mezzanine level, which is currently used for planning commission meetings, is not accessible to the public, or accessible for a disabled person. The elevator and machine room don't have the compliant braided shaft and enclosure. Also, I should point out, I think I stated this, but the planning commission is not accessible. Also, the basement is utilized for personnel training, and that's not currently ventilated as well, so it's not an occupiable space. So I think that's something to be noted, and we'll get into that with the usable square footage in a little bit. The structure, it's yellow because it's I think structurally fine, but the floors aren't aligned, so you do notice that, and it does not meet ADA.
It doesn't lend itself to efficient use. Might be a way to say that, but the building is structurally sound.
Yes, that's good.
It's been worked out.
Well, it's 4 buildings merged together at different floor-to-floor heights.
Several MEP system code violations. HVAC units need to be replaced. Electrical panels are at maximum capacity. And we did recently learn of a strong odor from the HVAC. And not sure what came of that, but there's some work needed. Okay.
The worst of the news is over.
Right. Okay, so moving into the Historic Health Department, its life safety and code is yellow, so fair condition. Structure is good, and building systems are fair with improvement needed. So this is the 2 levels in the basement. parking lot across North Church, and hourly parking around the square. The building is not sprinklered, and I should point out this one is on the historic registry, so taking all that into account with any kind of code compliance, there could be variances accepted for this building. But the building's not sprinklered, the stairs have handrails but not guardrails, and most doors are ADA accessible for the hardware, but some don't meet approach requirement. Exit signs missing. There's a dead-end corridor. It's not code compliant. The first level restrooms are, I think they've been modified to meet ADA accessibility, but the second floor is not, and it's deficient in plumbing count by one water closet and one lavatory. The structure, as I said, is pretty good. Minor cracking was observed, but not considered a structural issue. And the MEP, the HVAC systems need replacement. Electrical system is at maximum capacity.
Question. You
Yes,
said it was on the historical record.
I believe so.
Okay. How can we make all these changes, structural changes, and keep it like it was?
You have some limitations. We haven't gone completely through all that, but we've noted it, that if you were to make significant changes, you have some issues associated with that.
To me, if you make the changes, then it's not this,
That's-
changing the history
That's
of it.
exactly the intent of getting a building registered, is to preserve it
Right.
in some close form to its historic nature. So, and this is the only building, well, this building is historic also. This one in the building we're in right now. So it does pose a little bit of a limitation to what you can do with the building. But I will say there are ways to work through that. I've seen people, and we've done that before. It kind of depends on what you want to do and how much impact does it have.
I know this building doesn't look the same as it did when I was elected 27 years ago. To me, it doesn't look the same.
Well, you put it back much more nearly the way it was since you've been here. I mean, that out there was, had a second floor in it, and
Yeah.
offices and et cetera that weren't there originally. So you put it back in a pretty
And we had
good condition as far as the original.
We put
Character
elevator
of it.
in too, and we did a lot to the stairway and so forth. And to me, that changes what the original was. Now, I don't know that I'd be for historical. But it's left up to the committee.
Well, this is to a large extent fact finding, and so that's a fact about this building. It has some degree of registration with historical that has to be dealt with.
Right. Same to be said then for the next. So then we have the historic courthouse, which is also on the historic registration. So life safety and code is fair, structure is good, and building systems are fair, needing improvement. This is 3 levels and a basement level. There's ADA accessibility from the exterior at one entrance. Parking is of course the public garage and the square hourly parking. The building's not fully sprinklered. Stairs have handrails but not guardrails. Stairs require 1-hour rating, not currently provided. One of the egress stairs is not wide enough. Hitting high level here. All single restrooms don't comply with ADA accessibility, but the larger multi-fixture restrooms do. Level 3 plumbing fixtures are deficient by 3 water closets and 2 lavatories. There's some damage to the plaster in the wall, level 1. Lobby, the 1960 wing has minor cracks in the brick in one corner, which is indication of foundation settlement, but does not appear to significantly impact structural integrity. And I believe the building is in the process of HVAC systems upgrade now. So that is needed. Electrical panels are close to maximum capacity. Okay. The next building is the 309 West Main Street where probation offices are located. So this one, we, for life safety and code.
This is a leased building.
Yes.
You're ready to say,
Yeah, it's leased.
Yes, and then, yeah. So this is red for life safety and code, green for structure, and red for building systems. So yes, this is one level. It's about 8,400 square feet gross, and it is currently leased by the county. The building is sprinklered. The building envelope does not meet current energy code regarding the windows, exterior walls, and roof. It's not cost effective to condition the space without major renovation. The exit signs are mounted low. Main entry door is not compliant with egress requirements. So 2 of the single restrooms are not ADA compliant. Drinking fountain's not compliant either. The structure is, there's no big deficiencies. The building was deficient in required occupant ventilation, and the electrical panels had breakers missing that could pose serious risk to personnel. That's more hazardous. Okay,
Since we lease this, it would be the landlord bringing that car, wouldn't it?
if we
Yeah, it's the
stay,
landlord's responsibility, assuming we continue to stay there for how
if we stay there,
We don't have to stay there. We'd love to find a space, but may not be, we have enough to go around here, but we're working on that. That's step 3 or 4.
okay. This is the last of the buildings on study. 319 North Maple Street. It's a fairly newer building. Life safety and code compliance is good, structure's good, and building systems are fair, just needing some updates. So it's 2 levels and a basement level. However, we understand from contacts at Hart Freeland Roberts, this is designed for future expansion, both vertically and horizontally. But further investigation would be required to confirm what those extents are. ADA accessibility from the exterior and that adjacent parking lot that's on site. Building is sprinklered. It's code compliant, generally with minor exceptions. So if this building were to receive another level, we'd want to just evaluate the stair there. I believe it's rated, but we just want to confirm that. And it's ADA compliant with minor exceptions like the break room sinks and single fixture restrooms are not compliant. Structurally, it seems fine. There's a crack on the level 1 in the break room that should be monitored. And MEP, there's some code deficiencies. There's a stove, so there's not proper exhaust there. Air handling units and boilers are at the end of or nearing the end of their projected service life, and electrical panels are at max capacity.
Okay, so that's the surveys. Any questions? I mean, we can obviously come back to it, but that's the methodology we've gone through to try and give an objective opinion about the condition of the buildings. All right, so the part 2 of our work, task 2, is the occupancy demand. And let me speak just a moment about the methodology, and then Ashton will walk us through that. We issued surveys to each of the department heads that had been identified that are in these buildings or that we needed to talk to. Then Afton sat down with each of those folks, went through the interviews, made sure we understood their response, and then filled in any gaps. And then we did a walkthrough of all the spaces with the folks. And then we applied the standards that were generated. By standards, I mean how big are cubicles, how big are offices, how big are conference rooms, and the square footage associated with that. We used the standards that were established for the new courthouse for this study to help us determine the demand. So, because right now there's a real mixed bag of what the different sizes of everything are. So, with that explanation, then Afton will walk us through what we have discovered in the try to do a forecast of how much space you need. First, how much space do you really have and how are you using it? And what's the forecast for what you could reasonably expect to think you will need? And that was a 5-year window, forecast for 5 years out.
That's right. So this slide 13 or page 13 is, again, the space standards that it gives a graphic representation. And then we have the table over here with those space standards that we also applied for the Judicial Center. So trying to give a standard size. Okay, and then we get into the programming. So on the following pages, with the exception of the Judicial Center, which is going to be vacated, but essentially we have on the left, there'll be the plans of where each county department is currently occupied, so pertaining to the county buildings that we just walked through. And then also there'll be a table with their usable square footage today in 2017, and then their needs, as Steve stated, in 2022, 5 years out.
But the first one, since that will be an empty building, it's slightly different.
Right.
Because it's just the capacity of the building after it's been vacated.
That's right. So I'm showing all 5 levels and then the chart. So basically, we're breaking out, there's the core area, which would be restrooms, and maybe electrical or mechanical. I've kept the single fixture restrooms separate because those could possibly get absorbed back into usable square footage. And then further over on the chart, we've got usable square footage available. So I've broken out the corridor versus the usable square footage because you've got around 5,000 maybe per level of usable square feet, but then the corridor takes up 2,000 or 1,500 between that number. But if this were a single tenant to occupy one level, you could give some of that corridor square footage over to the usable. So then breaking that down into, I guess we have the total on the far right. But really the column under the USF, the usable square footage, is probably what to pay attention to, is the 25,000 number in total over the 5 levels. And then you could possibly capture some of that 8,818 number from the corridors over to usable as well.
So if you do that arithmetic, it's 34,000 square feet, somewhere in that range, of usable space. That's pretty detailed, and we've gone a little further than you might think we needed to, but this information then helps us do the scenario planning, so that's why it's broken down a little bit further. That will be useful information for us.
Right. Okay. The next, so staying in the same order as the building evaluations, we're going to the Goldstein building. So this is based on the departments that are currently located. Election Commission with currently occupying about 4,091 square feet. Building codes, planning and engineering. Deputy mayor is also, his office is there. There's some state offices with the inspectors as well as the water services. And then also the planning commission room that I mentioned before, that's at the mezzanine level. So again, showing graphically to the left where those departments are located, and then the table to the right is corresponding in color to where those are located. Also to be mentioned, there's the usable square footage line right after all of those departments, but then there's also some Common Core square footage, and there's a lot of storage being utilized in the basement. So that'll come up with each department's square footage needs. They're really in need of storage space, and they're using a lot of the basement in Goldstein currently. Also, and I mentioned the Election Commission, they have a lot of computer and printer storage currently in the basement of the Goldstein. And that's that yellow down at towards the bottom of the table. right?
Go over the forecast. Okay.
Oh, right.
But another part of this chart is
Yes,
the
that's right, the
forecast.
personnel. So the second column over is 2017 head count. So, about 8 for election commission, 17 for building codes, 15 for planning engineering. There's the 1 deputy mayor, and then the 2022 head count, you can see how that increases based on what that department estimated their needs to be in 5 years out.
And after all that's the 2022 usable square footage, did you use those space standards to compute these numbers that you say is necessary?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's how much they really should have.
Yeah.
The 2017 is what they currently have.
That's right. So 2017 is what they currently have, not with space standards. 2022 is taking the space standards and also their projected growth needs into that number. So that's a great clarification. All right.
I think the deputy mayor only needs like a broom closet size space.
We've already moved him out of that space.
That's way.
He don't hang
He's not even in there now. The veteran service officers do that now.
All he got is standing room only.
Standing room.
That's it, including himself.
Just fitness program.
All right. All right. The next, so slide 17 is the historic health department. Only 3 groups in here. Recovery courts with currently 11 for their head count and 3,196 square feet. Projected growth is 21 for personnel and then 9,776 square feet. It's quite a significant jump, and there's a note at the bottom regarding the recovery courts that the projected growth, that 21 head count, is actually including 4 positions that have been granted to them this summer, so they currently don't have the space for these, the staff that they are going to be adding. Risk management is 10 currently, with 2,063 square feet and 100 roughly in files in the basement of this building, with a projected growth of 11, and then 5,111 for 5 years out for the usable. And HR is 1,282 currently, and then projected, they still say 5 with 3,841. I think a lot of that is support space that they're in need of.
Almost 3 times as much in 5 years.
Right. They're very much, I think they're not in the space standard currently. They're pretty tight in that amount of square footage.
Of course, you gotta have a place to put the people that are required to
Right.
fulfill their duties,
Right.
Can't stack them on top of each other.
We talked about that. Also, not in the, well, it is in the table, but on the basement level plan, I'm just showing it's currently utilized for a lot of file storage, including about 800 square feet of the sheriff's files are down in the basement of this building.
Anthony, can I ask you a question about that?
Mhm.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but maybe you have some expertise in that. A common theme seems to be we're giving up a lot of square footage, valuable square footage, for historic file storage. Can we not move that to a digital kind of storage, or does the state demand that certain files have to be original paper documents? And can we not lobby the state, or have perhaps a new senator lobby for demand for going digital on some of these documents for multiple reasons? One would be open up valuable storage and room capacity.
So, in a general response, I would say there's still a need for records, depending on which group it is, to have the actual, hard copy records for a certain amount of years. It depends what group it is.
There's not a set answer. By statute, it depends on the agency how long they have to keep paper records. the question could be, is where's the most cost-effective place to do that?
Yeah.
In office
Yeah.
space versus warehousing, archival.
Right.
And then there is the discretionary move agencies can make to go digital, but they have to go through the transition, and there's some equipment and that transition cost. Because we went through that with the clerk's office, you know, from the old existing judicial to the new, where we are doing a lot of transition and reducing storage. But that is an excellent question. It does chew up a lot of space, and it has a couple different answers about how you go about solving it.
And we're already doing some of that. The rest of these has a special piece of equipment in there that we are digitizing, you might say, data.
All right.
And it's just a tedious,
So we're moving that
We
direction.
are moving
It-
slowly
it
in
may
that
be slow,
direction.
but
Yeah, I think you
Okay.
clearly are moving in that direction because it is happening. But
Right.
it happens.
Those moving into the judicial center are definitely taking that route. And as I met with department heads, it sounds like those who can, they're aware and,
Yeah.
and starting that process
Yeah,
with.
there's good awareness. Everybody is trying to move in that
Yeah.
direction.
it just seems like if you took all the demand for storage in these,
Mm-hmm.
what we're looking at, you could almost fill up an entire building just in the storage requirements.
Probably
Right.
so. Yeah, but we haven't added it up. But
Yeah.
Well, and another point real quick on this is for the sheriff specifically. Well, there's another slide later about some other functions related
other-
that we can discuss.
Yeah.
So they are aware, they'd like to consolidate, or I should say consolidate, combine. They have storage scattered
Yeah.
from archives to this location and then one in Laverne, I believe, in archival storage. So that's
Alright.
another, that brings another part to, it's an added to the study. Also, the basement wouldn't be occupiable space either. So not that it's also not, it's really not great to store
Yeah.
records that need to be kept
not-
in good
It's
condition.
not very conditioned space.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
But each department has a records management program, but there's so many things, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's so many things that are state mandated that the statute of limitations before you can do anything about it.
it's different on all of
Yeah,
it. You know.
there's different sets of.
Most of what the sheriff
limitations.
has a life that never ends, 99 years on all these inmate records.
It wouldn't be carte blanche that you say, well, you know, after 3 years, we're going to do all
It's going
of
to purge
those.
everything
There's,
that's
uh,
over 3 years old.
there's
It would be great if it was that simple.
But
There's
some
so
of
many,
it-
there's so many records that people need access to in perpetuity, you know, basically, I guess.
Yeah. I just don't understand why they couldn't be digital. They'd still be available, they'd just be
A lot of
digital.
that can be digitized. It's just,
Yeah.
it's labor intensive the first go around.
The transition is the hurdle.
Well, I didn't mean to get off
No,
track.
No, it's a good question, and
Yeah.
it's a big user of space.
Okay. All right, next, the historic courthouse.
Page 18.
Yes, page 18. So the mayor's office, currently I didn't have projected growth there, but also OIG is occupying this courthouse with currently 31 personnel, 3,000 square feet, with a projected growth of about 36 and 7,143 square feet. And there's some need to, they have the current data center in this building, which would be relocated, but there's still a need to have an NDF in this, their main distribution or IT room in this building.
Yeah, some of the function is leaving this building to go into the new courthouse, but we've factored that into these numbers.
The trustee's office has 6 personnel with 1,467 square feet, and then projected growth of 7 with 2,242 square feet. Finance, 14 personnel, 2,304 square feet, and then projected growth is 15, bringing to 4,007 square feet. Also in the courthouse is the county commission chamber and this conference room that we're currently in. So that chamber is broken out in the 3,043 square feet, and then this conference room, and then a shared break room, or that 589 square feet total. not a lot to say. Probation, or the next one is slide 19, 309 West Main Street. Again, this is one level, so it's completely occupied by probations. And I did receive, their current head count is 24. And I guess usable in this building is around 7,600, but they have a projected growth in 5 years to be 31 personnel with 12,362 usable square feet needed.
On the 2022 usable square feet data on all this, how did you come up with that number?
The usable square feet, so it's based on the number of people spaces would be a certain square footage. Plus, we have, going back to that graphic standard of
Right,
space standard,
okay.
so then there's conference rooms or support type spaces, break areas, copy work areas, with circulation factored in as well. So that's,
What circulation did you use, 30%?
it might have been higher,
Yeah, 40.
honestly, it was probably
There's a
higher.
multiplier for the actual people space, then there's a 30-45% circulation added to that to connect all the spaces.
And the department projected how many new people they were going to hire in the next, need in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's where those numbers came from.
That's
And then this graph was used to...
Yes, multiplied by the number of people.
Multiplied by the usable square foot.
Right. So an Excel spreadsheet outside of this document was utilized to capture all of that and calculate with the formulas to get to those numbers. So this is the summary really that you're seeing.
So basically, if they were going to increase their personnel by 5 or 6 of the same people, there's a generic figure, I'm sure, that they need so many square feet of space.
Yeah, I had them tell me if it was, for instance, if they needed privacy or needed an office, if they were that type of position versus a workstation type, and that's a different square footage. So
That's those, I call them standards, but that's what we're applying. Trying to bring in uniformity across all county workers. They all, wherever you are with your job description, you get the same kind of space. It's what you need, and it's trying to be fair across the entire, all organizations.
right. So the survey form got into that amount of detail, and then we took that and implemented it with the space standards.
Are there any, are you able to answer this question? Are there any departments that kind of co-mingle enough that they would need to be close to each other? Does that come in?
We're
So we're
gonna talk
gonna-
about that in just a
Yeah.
minute.
You're gonna see.
Great.
You guys have really good questions. We're almost to that.
Okay, all right. So, let's see, yes, we're on page 20, slide 20. And I'm there, okay. 319 North Maple, so this is the clerk on the first level, with 28 personnel, currently 8,063 square feet. I'm also showing, there's a storage that is also included in these lines that's up on the second level. And then, so for the 2022 head count for the clerk, it's projected to grow to 44. And then 10,000 square feet. I think that's mainly probably counter positions interfacing with the public. The Register of Deeds, head count of 14 currently with 5,759 square feet. Projected to be 16 personnel in 2022, and then about 6,461 square feet with some storage in that level 2 storage room. Property assessor is at 28 personnel, about 11,562 square feet, projected to grow to 37. We actually have 10,156 for square footage there. I think with just using that space standard.
That actually goes down. That number goes down.
Right. The storage, again, that's kept separate, but it's 2,173 square feet, which I divided up roughly on how much they're utilizing when we walk through the space with that department, with each of the 3 departments. All right.
So, let's make sure I understand, on the head count, what these departments are saying that they'll need in 5 years, that's the number of people in that college, that,
That's right.
That's correct.
That's right.
Yep.
And there's some cases where they may have a part-time, I think for the most part that we calculated that as 0.5, but I need to clarify on that.
okay, that's good, yeah.
It's
Kind
a,
of make it equivalent to a full-time if it has a part-time staff, so, or seasonal staff.
They seem to be making sense until this page.
Well, in other words, she's just used the numbers they said that they needed, okay?
Yeah,
That doesn't
yeah.
mean that's how many.
We're not making,
It's not actual.
I know what
we're
you
not
mean.
making a judgment on how they operate, how many
And she
people they
applied
need.
the space factors. You can see, for example, if you've been up in the property assessor's office, you know, there's quite a bit of open space in that main area up there that they're saying could be subdivided into office spaces or cubicles
Yeah,
or
and you
whatever.
can see their number is growing, but the actual space
See,
is
and the
coming
actual-
down because that reflects just.
2022 required space is less than they already have, a little bit there. So that's just the way the dynamics work out there.
Right.
And you mentioned that this particular building, that is apparently Hartfield and Roberts design, was anticipated to grow up and down.
That's correct.
Do we know how far up the
Well,
foundation is?
I talked to Mike Picklesheimer. Do you know Mike?
Yeah.
Chairman? He worked for Hart Freeland when they designed it.
Okay.
And to the best of his memory, it was designed for 3 floors.
3 additional?
3
or
vertical
total?
floors, 3 more. And then it's sided to the corner of the property so that the other side of the block, you could go out.
Now, did you
on the
say
other
3
side.
more, Steve, or just 1 more?
3 more.
So a total of 5.
But we have not been able to confirm that.
Okay.
So
All
that,
right.
we're trying to get to the bottom of that, but that was to the best of his memory.
Cheaper to go up or cheaper to go out?
It's cheaper to go out
It is?
than it is to go up.
Really? Okay.
But apparently, because the mechanical systems are in the basement of this building, they did some good pre-planning in that not everything's sitting on the roof, so it's easier than it would normally be to go vertical.
Okay.
So we'd have to do some design analysis to get an accurate answer for that.
That was,
But somebody did some good
yeah,
pre-planning.
that was a smart play.
It was.
And might
So-
really be an answer to a problem down the road here.
It sure could. And there was some good planning happened a number of years ago.
all right. So the next slide is touching on basically summarizing the buildings we discussed in the first part of this. Get the snapshot really of the usable square footage that is available in each of these buildings listed. So we're looking at about 110.
That's with no improvements. That's how it is right now.
That's right. And then the next slide shows that, going back to the departments, the total personnel and usable square footage utilized currently in 2017, as well as what's needed in 2022. So that chart breaks that down with about, without the county commission chamber and the planning commission meeting room and the extra support space in this courthouse, it's 100,778, and then with those added support spaces, 106,125. So this next slide really just compares those together. So what's available,
Yeah, 23 is the simple
23.
comparison. Yeah.
yes. So what's available in the buildings, currently what is occupied, utilized, and then what's needed in 2022.
And that's including this 110, that's including the West Main building that we rent?
Yes.
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 A little over 50% increase.
From 17 to 22.
And then we had touched on this, so slide 24, page 24, there's some related functions to be considered. This would be really just with the existing judicial center becoming vacant, just some other departments or functions that would make sense for that. So we did contact the public defender and district attorney, although they're state, just to have an understanding generally what they occupy and their projected growth as well. So we're showing about projected growth for the public defender would include 10,000 usable square feet, and then the district attorney is about 14,000 usable square feet. Archives, that's about 10,000 square feet at the current building, and 1,700 square feet of that is or what I mentioned, the sheriff's archives. And then speaking with the record manager with the sheriff, they probably have about 3,000 square feet of archived records now, but with a projected growth to 5,000, just because they do, I think that's the statute for them to maintain these records, physical records.
But there's one other idea that
Oh, that's
emerged. There's a small medical office building nearby that Judge Tidwell, I guess through the mayor, has raised that up as a possibility to locate the recovery courts. We haven't really dived into that, if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but this page 24 sort of captures some other ideas and things that have come up while we were doing this that seem pertinent to at least think about and be aware of, that could play into decision making.
Is the public defender and the attorney general, district attorney, are those apartments going to be in the new judicial building?
No,
No.
their office space is still where they are. I mean, they're providing their own space.
They provide their own
But
space.
they have, work areas and assembly areas for their clients, et cetera, but no office space like they currently have at their space that the state rents.
In this sort of crazy chart on page 25, I have to explain what we do with this thing.
Okay,
This kind of goes back to your question.
yeah, adjacency, so
Well, it's kind of busy.
it is busy. It's hard to make a clean adjacency diagram really whenever a lot of groups are integrated or closely working together. But the left is a legend, essentially by the circle size that we're showing. It's representative of the head count or the personnel. So I should say size and color to try to help graphically show that.
The bigger departments versus the smaller ones.
Yes. And then we've got primary adjacencies shown with a double line, secondary adjacencies with a single line, and then if they're not connected, then there's not really a adjacency need. But then also showing a building boundary. So the new judicial center, which we're showing the circuit court clerk within that boundary, and then the functions or departments that would be closely tying to that building, as well as the circuit court clerk.
Yeah, and this chart is something we will use to grade the scenarios, how well they work. It will tell us how the pieces need to relate to one another, and that goes to the efficiency question of putting departments together that can share things like break rooms and lobbies, and more public access, less public access. This chart helps us navigate that. So that's a part, we capture that information while we're having these conversations with folks. All right, so that's a lot of information. I understand that. It's 2 months worth of work, so it's a lot for you to expect to understand in a few minutes. Our next steps, first of all, questions and answers, and then our next steps are to develop the scenarios of what to do next with your property. And then we will work on that and present options probably at the September meeting about what our recommendations of the scenarios are, and then that'll be a very good conversation about that. Where we go from there. and then we will develop the final report.
That'll be the shop factor.
That will be where we will make recommendations about what to do, where to do it. A couple other things that we are having done is that we will have some commercial real estate values. We will have the buildings analyzed for a range of what is the expected value in the marketplace. We also have a contractor lined up to help us do some cost estimates of what these improvements could reasonably expect to cost if you would choose to do those.
Okay. Will you have an answer on the building? How many stories we can go up?
We're going to do our best to have an answer on that, yes, sir.
I think that's very important.
We've reached out to Hart Freeland to try and get the structural drawings so we could, have a really good answer on that, but we're going to try to have that. We don't have it right now.
And maybe an approximate dollar per square foot
Yeah.
build up.
Yes. Yeah, we'll put a range of what's
Okay.
reasonably expected.
So help me out on page 21. Of this current usable square footage in these buildings, is any of that, how much, if any of that, is going to be relocated to the new judicial building?
I told,
Judicial building?
Our new building that'll open next year. Any?
Nothing.
none of
We've none of these spaces are people.
are going in there. That is
Okay.
correct. We've been real careful
Well, you could
and
say-
not double count.
The main server room that's holding OIT's
IT.
equipment, that's going over there. So
Okay.
that small little room over here in this courthouse will likely be available.
Yeah.
But we have not included that in there, in the IT number. We've reflected that they are moving their server room to the new building.
And my understanding is there would still be a
Still be
need
a-
for an
A
MDF.
small server room in this
Right.
building to serve this
support
building.
this building,
So it's not going to
yes,
be completely vacated.
possibly.
That's correct.
All right, and I'm sorry I wasn't following you.
No, this is a lot of information.
My brain was going through a development thought here, but
We already have several straw man development
Yeah,
scenarios. we're
let me
working on.
ask this question. On page tile 23. And again, the year 2022 seems like a long time out, but it's really not.
It's not.
Uh,
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about my philosophy
Okay.
there. A 5-year forecast can be pretty accurate. If you try to do a 20-year forecast, it's just 5 years is a usable, workable number
Right.
that's actually can have some reality around.
Okay, so what I think you're telling us on slide 23 is, we currently have approximately 110,000 usable square footage, right?
That's correct.
But
Our
be
demand-
sure you understand that includes the annex
Yeah, that's
and it includes
Includes
those
3
two
buildings.
three
that have
buildings
serious
that are
problems.
about to fall
that are
down.
in the red.
Not really, but
three
kinda.
red circles.
Right, I understand.
Yes, sir.
And currently, the demand is 70,000 square feet. Projected demand in 5 years is 106. So in a if the world was perfect and those buildings were in good shape, scattered around the square in a couple of block radius, in a hodgepodge way, we kind of have the square footage, sort of, kind of.
Let me
Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
Let me get after to confirm this one
Yeah.
point, though. You see what we got for current 2017 US, that's how much they have.
Right.
That doesn't mean that's how much they really need.
Okay.
Today, even
She
today.
hasn't, she hasn't applied her
That's right.
space standards
Oh, yeah, okay.
to that group of folks in each of those locations.
Okay.
In the recovery courts, they're taking on 4 more personnel
So those hadn't
currently
been added.
that
They're already-
they don't have room for.
They're already
In a stressful situation, and we're not able to tell you that 2 more can.
That's right.
Gotcha.
So there's 6.
Yeah,
above.
that's just hot off the press. There's 2 more. So a part of the scenario planning is the kind of puzzle assembly for us to come back to you guys with some reasonable scenarios that you'll need to debate.
That's where the magic happens.
I wouldn't call it magic, but it's certainly it's kind of fun to do. Actually, it's a puzzle. And that's our task, to come back with reasonable scenarios that capture efficiency, put people close to one another, that you can make it as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
What you see on page 25, Mr. Gooch, that will be a critical component of how they try to
Yeah.
put together.
That's why it's kind of a funny looking diagram, but it's very
In
useful,
nearby spaces.
useful for us.
So in the next meeting, when you have potential market value for some of these buildings, that'll be in their current condition for it.
That's correct.
Okay.
It'll be a baseline of what the value is with no improvements.
Yeah.
And then we will have an estimate, for instance, if the county wants to keep them and improve and fix them,
Yeah,
here's what you could reasonably expect to have to spend.
okay. All right.
That will be part of the narratives of these scenarios.
And just, I'm not a builder or developer, so I'm gonna ask, this may be a silly question. If we say, okay, we have 3 buildings currently on the square, Goldstein, Judicial Center Annex, and Judicial Center. If we say, man, let's just turn those over, put them on the market, let developers buy them and develop them, keep them in the tax rolls, do we have to upgrade those to any current standards or codes, or could we sell those as is?
I think you can sell anything as is.
Okay.
As is, where he is.
Yeah. I don't want to get outside of my realm of
understand.
expertise, but yes, you can sell anything as is. Then there is the question of, is anybody going to buy it?
Right.
And what do you have to do to get it ready to sell? What do you do to your house when you go sell your house? How much do you fix your house up?
If you put them up for sale, whoever the prospective buyers are going to do their own homework, their own due diligence.
They will do this
And that'll
themselves. Yeah.
determine what their value is.
But we're talking the square of Murfreesboro.
Absolutely, there is incredible value of
Developers
being
would
on
be-
this
I
square.
think they'd be beating each other over the head.
I would
trying
think
to
so
get to
too,
that.
but I don't know.
Yeah, and then we take that money and add 2 more floors over on. And then we're all
You're already
Good
doing
scenario.
what we're
Happy
doing.
family
We're
over
doing
there.
scenarios.
I
That's
like
exactly what
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
3, yeah, we would need, actually, I did the math, we'd need 3
We
floors,
need
yeah.
3.
We will.
Yeah.
Probably have enough left over after dinner.
We might.
I hope he's correct about the 3 floors.
I do too. I haven't thrown
That's
something
a high
out.
one.
That's
We could
crazy.
add one more
So-
floor.
Really?
That's all I've ever heard. Now, I hope he's correct.
Well, and that's what Mike said, but we're going to get to the bottom of that. I'll have a definitive answer for you. I mean, if I can get the structural drawings, I'll hire someone to figure that out.
But as I recall, I'm like the mayor, I always thought we
We
could
had
go up one
one
story.
story, okay.
That's what I thought.
All right, well,
We'll
you
go
got
up
maybe-
1 and out 2.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but if we can go up 3, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we'll see. I may have misspoken, I hope not, but
Yeah.
we're going to try and get to the bottom of that. Because that is important.
Did we keep copies of our changes and so forth, have records of
Changes on what is.
our architect work and so forth when we do work? Do we keep copies?
Well, Ben has got copies of most of the plans. He shared, that's where they got these plans that they
Yeah,
have
pretty
come
good
up with all
records.
these numbers.
That's what I'm thinking, then we should go back and find the plans on it, and it would tell where it
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get our hands on. We
Yeah.
haven't been able to do that yet.
That's right.
Nobody works at Hartfield
There-
or Roberts who
There
worked
was
on that
no,
building.
that's right. And there was not a note in the documents that somebody did help me with there.
Yeah.
There was not a specific note stating how many levels, but there were things that led us to believe
Yeah.
that it,
So it may actually require some engineering calculation for us to give you a better answer,
right.
which is important for this study.
Yep.
All right, I think
great.
that's our show and tell.
That was very
for
nice,
today.
thank you.
Thank you. All right,
That's a very good job.
we're half done.
Have done, and I think
I want this committee, you remember any number of people that suggested that the mayor could do
Yeah,
all this by
I'll get ready to
himself.
bring that up.
Yeah, you see what this,
Oh, there's a smart guy who gets 2 hours in the day.
I was getting ready to bring that up.
okay, thank you.
Make sure that.
There were some
the commission know
naysayers.
that.
There were some naysayers.
Yeah.
I think the mindset was the make money. It's easy peasy, you know.
I think all they were looking at was moving people. They wasn't
we
looking
keep these
at
or you need
what
these
we
back?
got.
I, certainly from our perspective, absolutely. That's, I guess, you know, your protocol of how you, about documents, yeah.
That will definitely have been busy.
I think it's a very good report.
So, yeah.
I think I see.
Any more questions on this report?
It's very nice.
Any other business to be brought up?
This is really not, this is just a report, Mr. Chairman. I just let the record reflect that we have signed and executed an amended deed regarding the property at the current recycling center at Rockville. So that has been executed, and that reversionary language has been removed.
Good. That's good. Any more questions? Any more new, any business to be brought up?
So will you guys be back for the next meeting, or you need? more
Right
time?
now, I think it'll be September, but there's a chance we might have something useful to talk about in August.
The
So I'd
only
like to
reason-
leave that open.
It may be, even though they're not quite ready, I'm just saying this, and that what's happening here in this recovery court and probation is putting such pressure on us. And
We're gonna go
have all these people in place by
fast as
October
we
the
can.
1st. We may have to get a little wiggle room here to make some sort of decision on what we do with that particular function. So we can put them somewhere. Okay. So that's all I'm saying. And he may not be for his final full,
Yeah, that's at your
but we
discretion.
might could work that in
Yeah.
as something that we can identify.
We can advance that
address.
piece.
Okay?
All right. Any more questions? Any more business to be brought up? Not entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.